must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Good afternoon to you, and thank you for joining us. This is Diaspora Dispatches, where I get to bring you the latest from the continent and indeed from across the world. My name is Miriam Mugutu. A minute past 3 p.m. here in Nairobi. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you're joining us today from across the globe. And we will start with South Africa. Soldiers are to spend another month on the streets of South Africa after the widespread unrest and looting that followed ex-President Jacob Zuma's jailing in July. In response to the violence, 25,000 troops were deployed, the biggest number since the end of white minority rule in 1994. The numbers will now be scaled down. President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced, with 10,000 troops remaining on the streets until mid-September. This month-long extension will cost $17 million. The president wrote in a letter to the head of the National Council of Provinces, Amos Masonda. Mr. Ramaphosa said the South African National Defence Force will work with police across the country in the prevention and combating of crime and preservation of law and order. We move on to Cameroon, and Cameroonians President Paul Biya has been pictured wearing a mask for only the second time since the coronavirus pandemic started. President Biya returned to the country on Monday after weeks of a private stay in Geneva, Switzerland. He was accompanied off the plane by First Lady Chantal, who also wore a mask. It is reported that the president has only worn a mask publicly once before, during his sister's burial. He is not wearing a face mask had become a subject of contention in the country, with many questioning why he was flouting his own government's guidelines. Demonstrators had previously camped outside the hotel where President Biya was staying during his Geneva visit, calling to return home and solve the country's ongoing strife. The English-speaking Northwest and Southwest regions demanding independence have been plagued for 4 years by a bloody conflict between armed groups and government security forces. And then we come back home here in Kenya, and Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta has announced a cash reward for all participants in the Tokyo Olympics. The 4 gold medalists will each receive 1 million Kenya shillings, that is equivalent to $9,100, while silver medalists will be given $6,800. The 2 bronze medalists will receive $4,500, while everyone who took part in the games and the technical team members will each receive $1,800. Kenya bagged 10 medals, more than any other country in Africa. The government had been accused of giving its team a low-key reception, especially compared to how Uganda welcomed its athletes when they returned home. And then we head over to the Ivory Coast, and Ivory Coast has begun a vaccination program against Ebola after the country confirmed its first case since 1994, the health ministry has said. It said the family of the infected teenager and health workers involved were the first to be given the jab. Health official Sergei Ehole said on Monday that there are plans to have vaccinated by Wednesday all the 2,000 people that they consider exposed from the community, and also people from the health system and security. The infected teenager tested positive on Saturday after arriving in the commercial hub Abidjan on a bus from neighboring Guinea. We head over to Mozambique. Mozambique's military chief has said the ongoing offensive in the restive northern region of Cabo Delgado has faced a little resistance because militants based there have likely discarded their weapons and disguised themselves as civilians. He said 95% of the militants were Mozambicans. Last year, the group captured the gas boom town of Palma and a strategic port town of Mocimboa de Praia. Mocimboa de Praia was retaken last week after a campaign led by the Rwandan troops who were deployed to the region last month as part of a bilateral agreement. And then we go to Nigeria. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has signed into law an oil fast bill introduced in the parliament nearly 20 years ago. The Petroleum Industry Act, which amalgamates about 16 previous laws, overhauls nearly every aspect of oil and gas production in Nigeria. It aims to attract more foreign investment and increase the local production of fossil fuels. It also reduces the government's vice-like grip on the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, the state oil company whose operations are widely seen as opaque. Companies are now required to invest 3% of the operating expenses into projects for local communities. The Nigerian energy sector has long been beset by corruption, inefficiency, as well as insecurity. We go to Zambia, and Zambian President-elect Hachilema on Monday slammed the Southern Africa country's outgoing brutal regime while promising a better democracy in his debut address to the nation hours after winning the top job in a landslide. Speaking shortly after his predecessor Edgar Lungu conceded defeat, the business tycoon and veteran opposition leader said his camp had been victims of a brutal regime that is existing. The Electoral Commission proclaimed Hachilema president-elect in the early hours of Monday, bringing the curtain down on Lungu's nearly 6 years' reign. Wiping away tears, Hachilema said his victory was the historic moment millions of Zambians have been waiting for. Hundreds of supporters had gathered on the dirt road leading to Hachilema's sumptuous residence in the leafy suburb of Lusaka, and they were calling him a father as he began to speak to them. So they have their own Baba over there. All right, and then we head over to Somalia. The Taliban's swift takeover of Afghanistan has raised concern that could encourage other Islamist militant groups around the world, such as Al-Shabaab in Somalia. Experts warn that when and if international forces there try to hand over security to Somali government, the world could see a repeat of what is happening right now in Afghanistan. Former Somali intelligence official Abdul Salman Gulaid says Somalia could see a similar development unless Somali government ends its over-dependence on international troops. He spoke on Monday, one day after pro-Al-Shabaab media outlets in Somalia celebrated the fall of Afghanistan's government to the Taliban. And still staying with Somalia, forces belonging to the African Union mission in Somalia have shot and killed 7 civilians following an ambush by Al-Shabaab militants last week. That is according to a Somalia governor who told the Voice of Africa. The governor of the Lower Shabelle region, Abdul Qadir Mohammed Nur, said he confirmed through meetings with local residents that 5 farmers were among the civilians killed. 2 other civilians whose vehicle broke down on the side of the road were also killed by the peacemakers, he said. Nur said he personally knew one of the farmers. The shootings took place near the village of Golwen, about 100 kilometers south of Mogadishu, on August 10th. Somali and AU officials confirmed Al-Shabaab militants had ambushed the peacekeepers during a routine patrol near Golwen, and soldiers engaged the militants in a heavy fighting lasting for several hours. The attack took place in a farmland area about 2.5 kilometers from Golwen, Nur said in a telephone interview to Voice of Africa. And then we go to Uganda, where Ugandan human rights activists have welcomed President Yoweri Museveni's condemnation of torture allegedly committed by police and the armed forces. However, rights activists say they are skeptical whether Museveni will back up his words by prosecuting security forces accused of abuse. Describing his security forces as lazy, Museveni said in a televised address on Saturday night that he wanted to discuss human rights concerns. Museveni warned security forces against backing out or beating suspects, detaining suspects for long periods in jail, and deporting foreigners without trial, saying it disadvantages the country. And then we go back to Nigeria, where gunmen in Nigeria have killed at least 3 people and abducted 20, including students and staff from an agricultural college in northwest Zamfara state. School officials say those taken include 15 male students and 4 other people. However, authorities on Monday said 2 staff members and one of the kidnapped students escaped and returned to the school. They were kidnapped on Sunday night from the College of Agriculture in Bakura, Zamfara state, after armed men opened fire and killed the school's security guards. The Zamfara State Police Command has yet to make an official statement. This is the latest in the spate of kidnap, ransom attacks devastating schools in northern Nigeria. And then we go back to Uganda, where we will end our bulletin this afternoon. And Uganda will take in 2,000 Afghan refugees fleeing the crisis in their country. Refugees Minister Esther Anyakun told the BBC that President Yoweri Museveni agreed to take in the refugees at the request of the Americans. It follows the weekend's lightning Taliban takeover and collapse of the federal authorities. The first group of around 500 Afghans are expected to land at Entebbe International Airport in a few hours' time. She added that the arrivals will be tested for COVID and enter quarantine. All logistics and costs will be handled by the U.S. government. When they land, Uganda will become the first African country to take in people fleeing the current crisis in Afghanistan. Uganda has a long history of hosting refugees and is currently home to more than 1 million people who have fled conflict or other natural disasters. Refugees in Uganda live in settlements or villages alongside the population. Some are given plots of land and allowed to work in the country. All right. And so that is the latest from the continent and indeed from across the world. So I think that is good of Uganda to agree to take on some of these refugees from Afghanistan. 2,000 of them are coming into Uganda, and as we know that Uganda already is hosting so many refugees, as well as Kenya. We are hosting so many refugees from Somalia, from South Sudan, and indeed other parts of Africa. We do have a good number of refugees here from even Rwanda and from Burundi. So that is that. So I think that is a good thing on Uganda's part to agree. And I think in Uganda they do have like a better structure on how they even get to monitor these refugees when they arrive in the country. And maybe that is something that Kenya could learn and see how can we better handle the situation of the influx on refugees here in the country. So Uganda has agreed to take in 2,000 Afghan refugees, and it becomes the first country in the continent to agree to shoulder, the burden of these Afghans who are fleeing their country now after the takeover by Taliban. And the price of war, the price tag is usually very, very high, and or instability in any country. It's not just that country that suffers. Other countries get to shoulder in that inconvenience, in that war, and you have to take care of these people who are running their countries. And I think at this point, from a humanitarian point of view, I think it's good of Uganda that it has agreed to do that, and I'm sure other countries will take suit. And according to the Ugandan government, the U.S. has agreed that they will take care of the cost of hosting these 2,000 Afghan, refugees in their country. So I think that is good, and we shall be having this conversation. And also another conversation that yesterday I think I raised this issue, and I think this is something that we've been talking about, and I see now security experts and even a former security official in Somalia is saying that this win by the Taliban in Afghanistan will raise a lot of, hope for other militant groups across the world, especially that of Al-Shabaab, which has been fighting for a similar cause in Somalia to have a totally Islamic state, and under Sharia law, under very stringent Sharia law and things like that. And that is what the ideology, Taliban is running and is, has been waging this war against the Western powers, what it perceived, they're coming in to, change how they are and who they are and their religion and all that. So it is mostly a religious ideology, which I think is very much embedded. And it is the same ideology that is driving, groups like Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, and other groups across, the world. So, concerns there is being raised about now groups like, Al-Shabaab are finding a voice and thinking now they could fight on and conquer a country like Somalia, and even for Boko Haram, a country like Nigeria, that they have really been, causing a lot of mayhem and chaos there. So we're joined this afternoon by Dr. David Matsanga, and we do have our another part of the conversation. The first part was for me to bring you the latest from the continent, and then the other part was for us to have a conversation about the tears of Afghanistans. And as we see, they are now fleeing for their lives. And you see the images coming in from the airport, which was closed yesterday but has been opened right now, but not for commercial flights, but for countries that want to evacuate their citizens who are in that country, but also for the Afghans who are trying to, run away from their countries. So that is the conversation we shall be having. So we are joined by Dr. David Matanga. Doctor, very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Miriam. I don't know whether I'm audible enough.
Yes, you are. We can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you very much. Miriam, have I missed one part of your show?
Yes, I'm done with the headlines, but you've not missed so much. I can update you, but it's okay.
Please, my dear sister, please. Because I was busy on an international call.
Okay.
From Doha. I think the Taliban's have been watching our our television channel online. So I was on a call. My Jesus Christ, I don't know. Someone was telling me they want to interview me on this situation of Afghanistan. But thank you very much. You give me an update as I sip some tea first.
All right, so we started in South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa has said that there will be the presence of the army on the streets in South Africa for the next 1 month, even as they wait for the situation there to cool. There has been army presence since those protests and the lootings and the chaos that emanated after the former president was taken to jail. And in Cameroon, Paul Biya returned from Geneva, where he's been, I think, resting, or I don't know if he's been receiving treatment. And it is the second time he's been seen wearing a mask. And when he was there, he was facing a lot of, pressure. Demonstrators were calling for him to return to Cameroon and fix, the latest crisis that has continued in the Anglophone-speaking regions of Northwest and Southwest regions there in Cameroon and also in Zambia. Something I think, Doctor, that you've been talking about here so much, because yesterday we were talking about how Zambian former, now outgoing president Edgar Lungu came out and congratulated his brother and thanking the people of Zambia. But the speech that was given by the incoming president adopted a different tone, and he was calling that regime a very brutal regime, and now he's promising better democracy, and he's saying this is the moment Zambians have been waiting for. And also he talked about how him and others have been a victim of this brutal regime and that has been existing. So he did not adopt a brotherly, nice, cordial tone when he was giving his maiden speech compared to what Lungu had said. So I don't know if Lungu should be worried that Hachilema will be going after him. I think that's a big question now. And also the issue in Somalia and Al-Shabaab now getting motivated after Taliban took over Afghanistan. I think that also is an issue. And, AMISOM is being accused of having killed some civilians. I think civilians became casualties when they were fighting this same Al-Shabaab militants. So that is also something there. So basically, that's what we talked about in general.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Thank you for an update on the diaspora dispatches across Africa. And of course, as you know, I am one of the few people who have said democracy in Africa there is no evolution in democracy. Democracy must evolve. Evolution must take place.
Evolve.
For democracy to grow, it has to take time. The level of democracy in Europe, in Britain, where I live, is 1,800 years. We are on the 66. We haven't even reached 100 years. No African country has reached 100 years to be able to understand what democracy, elections, and whatever human rights, that is. In Britain, for example, You are not told to queue for a bus, to make a line for a bus, Miriam. You simply start and go on the line and that's it. You wait for the next passenger to go inside, then you come out. So what is happening here is our African democracies, Africans, time has come, any president on this continent, any African on this continent, to start asking whether democracy, whether elections are necessary. Is it necessary to have elections? Or is it necessary just to, just bump and tell people what to do? Look at what the mess that we have in Africa. Yesterday, Lungu did not want to use the army. He just surrendered power. This morning, HH, some of us who are friends of HH are going to pick up phones and tell him, don't go that route. If the man pained you, don't pain him. You are going to bring chaos and the army will take over. You know, situations are there. Who of you knew that Trump had talked to Taliban? You only have discovered the tears of Afghanistan now. Medium, as we went to the press, Uganda has received refugees.
They will be landing.
My country has started receiving people arriving here. America has caused us a problem again. And they are now dumping people in our country. You know, some of these people are experts of bomb making. These are experts that, they were taken out of Afghanistan. You see the way the movement, the way they came. We are creating chaos for our African countries. And someone accepts and says, yes, bring them. I am a refugee, yes. I have been a refugee 36 years, but I did not go to Britain with guns. No. Now look at the problem America has created. If Uganda has taken refugees, I think how many Kenya is going to take? We don't know.
I'm not sure, but Uganda has taken
at least Uganda has been very open and come out and said, hello, don't blame us. We have already taken the refugee. Why do you go there? Why did you go there? And two, the point that I just want to make now, because I'm very pissed off about this whole episode. And the people in Africa are not watching. Have you seen now Al-Shabaab is going to celebrate? It is going to give them the momentum, the impetus, the courage, the stamina to stage more attacks and say, after all, Miriam, we shall go scot-free. America has done something which is very, very, very bad. And something that we cannot keep quiet and fail to condemn. America has created us a nightmare. I told you that they were looking for somewhere where to dump luggage. Miriam, didn't you hear me the last 2 weeks? I've been saying there. I even wrote an article. I said American planes are hovering over Africa to look for where to dump a crisis. The first crisis is now in my country. 500 refugees. 2,000. Even if you bring us money, we don't know. We are not going to restrict them from going to the shops. We are not going to restrict them from leaving and going somewhere else. You see, these are difficulties that American foreign policy has created on African continent. It's a great shame, a very, very huge shame that given this type of life, we don't have any other way out. It has reduced us to beggars. The tears of Afghanistan have begun falling in Africa. Let's begin the topic.
Well, let's continue the topic you have begun. The day after the Taliban installed themselves in the presidential palace in Kabul, seizing control of Afghanistan 2 decades after being toppled from power by the U.S. military, fears intensified on Monday through on to today about a return to the Taliban's brutal rule and the threat of reprisal killings. Kabul's international airport was under the protection of foreign forces, including thousands of U.S. soldiers sent to the country to assist in a hasty evacuation. It was a scene of desperation, sadness, and panic. And in Washington, D.C., U.S. President Joe Biden said he stood squarely behind his decision to withdraw troops from Afghanistan and fired scorching criticism at the country's former Western-backed leadership for failing to resist the Taliban. President Biden defended his decision on Monday to withdraw troops from Afghanistan, arguing that the U.S. mission was complete and that the nation building was never the initial goal. So we do have a part of the clip of the speech by the U.S. President Joe Biden yesterday. So let's just take a listen in, and then we will continue with this conversation.
I've argued for many years that our mission should be narrowly focused on counterterrorism, not counterinsurgency or nation building. That's why I opposed the surge when it was proposed in 2009 when I was vice president. And that's why, as president, I'm adamant we focus on the threats we face today in 2021, not yesterday's threats. I stand squarely behind my decision. After 20 years, I've learned the hard way that there was never a good time to withdraw U.S. forces. That's why we're still there. We were clear-eyed about the risks. We planned for every contingency, but I always promised the American people that I would be straight with you. The truth is, this did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated. So what's happened? Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed, sometime without trying to fight. If anything, the developments of the past week reinforced that ending U.S. military involvement in Afghanistan now was the right decision. American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves. We spent over $1 trillion. We trained and equipped an Afghan military force with some 300,000 strong, incredibly well equipped. A force larger in size than the militaries of many of our NATO allies. We gave them every tool they could need. We paid their salaries, provided for the maintenance of their Air Force, something the Taliban doesn't have. Taliban does not have an Air Force. We provided close air support. We gave them every chance to determine their own future. We could not provide them was the will to fight for that future. There's some very brave and capable Afghan special forces units and soldiers. But if Afghanistan is unable to mount any real resistance to the Taliban now, there is no chance that 1 year, 1 more year, 5 more years, or 20 more years of U.S. military boots on the ground would have made any difference. And here's what I believe to my core.
All right. Thank you so much. That is United States President Joe Biden. They are saying that there's never a better time to leave this war. At some point, the U.S. had to leave the war that they've been there fighting for 20 years. And they're saying that, the leaders of Afghanistan gave up. Even their own forces gave up and collapsed. And so it made it easier for, the Taliban to take control in that country. Yesterday, it was defending the move by the U.S. to withdraw its troop that has led to essentially the collapse of Afghanistan's regime that has now been taken over by the Taliban. Doctor?
First of all, the tears of Afghanistan is now our series that we shall continue talking about it almost every day. we shall be bringing the Miriam, I would like to announce to our viewers that it was difficult, and it is from an outside layman watch like us who have watched the pictures where our people were climbing that plane. Now imagine those planes land on American ships. Now you don't know, first of all, the way things are happening in Afghanistan, there are no former troops. Where are the soldiers gone? Where is the Afghan army, the Afghan police that we have been building for 20 years? Has it just melted in thin air? Where has it gone? You are telling me on this show that they are not refugees. Who are they? They might not be Taliban. How do you know? Because we haven't seen any separation between until the Taliban settle down and we see there is no resistance. The army that we trained for 20 years just disappeared in thin air. Has it joined the Taliban? These are the tears of Afghanistan. These are the questions that everybody is asking. And we are not going to fear from asking. We are not going to keep quiet and fail to ask. And nobody is going to stop everybody in the world. The refugees are not being brought in Nigeria, so you can make your noise in Nigeria. The refugees are being brought in my country, Uganda. And I'm entitled to ask these questions. I hope the Uganda government is taking care of screening them before they are given asylum or short temporary asylum. The Americans are saying it's a short temporary asylum, but it is not short. It will not be short. Because why are they not, if it is short temporary? There's plenty of land in Arizona. They should have been flown to Arizona. You see? So if these guys come as chameleons, where are we going to end? They could actually change the color. The USA also has changed the color. The United States of America is policing the whole world, telling people not to talk to terrorists. There is evidence now that President Trump started talking to a terrorist long time ago and promised him all these things. No wonder the Taliban are enjoying food, rice, mutton in the palace without any bullet. What is the tactical operation? Okay, if there is any tactical operation, I asked yesterday the question, Miriam, what next will you do if the Taliban start cutting people's hands? Is the world, the Security Council, going to sit down and watch? Those are the questions, the tears of Afghanistan. It is not a big exercise. We talk. We want to chat with people, Miriam. We want to educate people. 20 years. A friend of mine from Afghanistan, whom I knew from London School of Economics, who was working with Karzai, he's on his way. He doesn't know whether he will be able to get out. Just sent me a text which I want to read too. I want to read it to you, which is very interesting. Miriam, it will open up quite a lot of things for you to laugh. It says, it starts by saying, he said, David, if you ever feel useless, just remember that United States of America took 4 presidents, thousands of lives, trillions of dollars, under 20 years to replace Taliban with Taliban. Have you heard that? That the United States of, if you are useless, David, he called me, look at that. This is somebody from Afghanistan. He's calling me now to say it took 4 presidents, thousands of lives, trillions of dollars, under 20 years to replace Taliban with Taliban. So, in a nutshell, I told you there are consequences with the tears of Afghanistan. I'm writing a book on this, Tears of Afghanistan. That's why every contribution medium you make, I'm noting it down. And the two of us, we shall be on the cover and smile. Look at this. This departure of Taliban, the departure of the Taliban of America from Kabul has given more ISIS, more chaos, more strength to Al-Shabaab, more strength to Boko Haram, as you said, more strength to Mozambican rebels, more strength to all rebels fighting, more strength to Tigray that you can overrun and the governments can run away. We want to talk until America returns. There is another way, another strategy that America should do. Now that you have seen they have come out, they were in the hills. Why don't you do as a tactical operation? You have got them. America always has ideas. Miriam, let's end it by saying and asking, are they going to be tears of Afghanistan? Or we shall wipe off our tears? How many refugees is Kenya going to receive? How many refugees is Uganda receiving? How many refugees? How many refugees is Tanzania going to receive? How many refugees is Nigeria going to be asked to hold because they are near America? And how many refugees will the world watch being? What about the internally displaced people? The internally displaced people, what about them? There are those internally displaced. There are those who don't know where to go. As much as we want to settle these ones out, the tears of Afghanistan will never stop flowing. Thank you very much, Miriam, for the day. Thank you very much, all of you. This station is for Africa, with Africa, by Africa. Always, Miriam, do that for me.
All right.
Please, whenever I'm not there, do that for me. The station is for Africa, by Africa, with Africa. Ciao.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, Progress and prosperity depends on peace, but peace depends on us.